So we are learning some JavaScript. So that is not any JavaScript. That is a general HTML concept only. In HTML, you have to do. So in the Google Classroom, you have to add into Google Classroom. And in that Google Classroom, you will find a first document called HTML tutorial. In that document, end-to-end everything related to whatever we discussed in the class is present. If you are new to class, once go through it. Okay, right. Yes, Sanket, what is your doubt?
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, should I present the screen?
Tell me first what is your doubt.
Actually, that password, na, sir, we have written that question mark is equals to dot star. In that, I have tried using that multiple times. I have given that for uppercase, lowercase, and then for numbers and special character by slash capital W. So, but it is not working, sir. I don't know why, but
just send your pattern in the message box. Okay. What you have written.
Okay, sir.
That pattern I will see.
Okay, sir.
What is your intention here? What you are trying to do? What is your
actually, sir, I typed the password as J capital and OHN John 123 @ but it is not taking.
What is your intention here? So your intention is this is the pattern you have written.
Actually, in today's means in some websites we have seen that ki one capital letter, at least one small letter.
That you can write like this, na?
Yeah.
Understood?
Yeah. Oh yes.
Understood?
Sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
So people who have got the classroom ID joined in our sessions in the later stage. So everyone got the classroom ID, the new people. You close the classroom ID, you got classroom ID, right? Yeah. So if you got the classroom ID, if you don't, then contact admin, okay? If you are not having the ID, contact admin. He will send you. And in that classroom ID, you will find the classwork. In that introduction to HTML, this document is there. Introduction to HTML. You select that introduction to HTML. In that introduction to HTML, so 200 pages of our class content will be there. In that, you will find all the topics that we discussed. The regular expression related also, you will find here all the detail about regular expression. The regular expression notes is also available here. So regular expression, okay. So regular expression, all the things what we have learned here, okay, it is available. Once go through entire document, you will get it, right? ID will be given by admin, okay. Contact admin, he will share you this, okay, right. So last session we discussed about a concept called how to define the patterns, because that is a general part of HTML. In HTML, for input, you have an attribute called pattern. That attribute is used for regular expressions. You can configure regular expressions, okay? That is used for regular expressions. So it is not anything JavaScript. It is general HTML only. After learning in HTML, you can use this in JavaScript, jQuery, because in HTML5 itself, we have a concept called pattern. So we have to use that, okay, right. So next, after understanding this, after understanding how to deal with this, so next important part is few more form controls are there. I will explain. If you already learned, it's good. So for our regular people, we need to understand some more. Then we can start with CSS. Okay. Regular expression, everyone understood now? All the concept of regular expression. So, right. So you practiced all the regular expression related points. Some more exercises we will do later. Then you will get more clarity in designing them. Right. Next, important, after knowing that some controls are there in the form elements we need to understand. So we have to know about the controls like radio buttons, checkboxes, drop down, so list box in HTML forms. So we have to handle them. So you have to continue here itself, right? Yeah. So here you have to continue. Here you can finish this forms concept. After that, we are going to start working with HTML, CSS. Understood? Got a clarity? No confusion? Huh? Because some people came from the other batch, right? Here you need to wait one more day to understand this forms concept. After this, you are going to go into CSS. Okay, na? Right. Right. So this batch itself, you need to continue. Okay, right. So we have to learn some more form elements. Let's see how to deal with form elements. Generally, form elements, we have the other form elements like radio buttons. What is the purpose of radio buttons and how we can use the radio buttons? The purpose of radio buttons. Generally, so when we ask for the purpose of radio buttons, generally one regular answer will come here. Suppose you see, suppose this is a form like. In the form like, you see you have options. These are radio buttons. These are radio buttons like no fill, solid fill, gradient fill. Generally, when we ask the question, what is the purpose of these radio buttons? What you will say? What is your answer? In general, what do you say? Radio buttons, what is the purpose? So, yeah. Majority, can we select all the values? Right? No. Generally, people will give the answer like radio buttons are used for selecting any one option. Am I right? Radio buttons are used for selecting any one option, right? So here it is for selecting one option. So this is one option. It is no fill, solid fill, gradient fill. Radio button is used for selecting any one option. Any one option. So technically, now the point here is, that is the answer generally everyone gives, like it is used to select any one option. But actually it's not like that. So I will show you a technical point. So by the answer that you give, so an interviewer can know your experience levels. If you say that radio buttons are used to select any one option, that is a very general learner's answer, not an experienced person answer. Why? Because I will show you here. Suppose we are having a form. In the form, we have field set and a legend. I say here, choose gender. And in this, we are giving input type is equal to radio. Input type is radio is used to design a radio button. This is male. Okay. I am using another option. Input type is equal to radio. So that is female. You can see that now it allows here, and we will put a button for submit. So we will just put a button for submit. So in the next line, just I will add a button here. Okay, submit. Now you can see when we run this, these are radio buttons. These are radio buttons. So when anyone says that radio buttons are used to select any one option, that is wrong. Because radio buttons allows to select one option or more than one option also. So it is working for multiple also. So radio button allows to select one or multiple option also. So if you say radio button is used to select one option, so we can prove wrong, because actually it allows to select more than one also. But problem with radio button is, actually radio button once checked, so once checked means selected, once selected, cannot be unchecked, cannot be unchecked. It cannot be unselected, deselected. Once checked, it cannot be deselected. For example, see, after selecting, I want to deselect female or male. And I am trying to click inside it again. It's not working. It's not working. We cannot deselect. We cannot deselect. That is the problem with radio. Once we refresh, it will be gone. But once you select, you cannot deselect it. So that means actually radio buttons works like this. Suppose, so we have a process. So we have a process. Now we have two tasks, task 1 and task 2. Means two radio buttons. So task 1 and task 2, these two radio buttons. Once this task 1 goes into process, it cannot come out of process. It will stay in the process only. Once it goes into process, it cannot come out of the process. It will stay in the process only. Now, when you send another radio button, it is also sent into the process, and they cannot come out of the process until or unless you restart the process. If you restart the process, then they are kicked out of the process. So once they go into process, they cannot come out. So due to this, radio buttons cannot be used for check and uncheck dynamically. So that is the reason what we do is we make these two radio buttons. We make these two radio buttons to run on. So to run on same thread. We make these radio buttons to run on same thread. We call thread. So that means if both radio buttons are running on same thread, then process will allow only one out of them. That means if a first task is sent into the process and from same thread, another task is sent into the process, then what happens is this process will send the previous task out. And when again this process, task 1 comes into process, then task 2 will come out of the process. That means if both radios are working on same thread, then only one is allowed, both of them. If one goes in, another one comes out. One goes in, another one comes out. This mechanism is called as, we call this mechanism as mutex. Mutex means mutual exclusion. So radio buttons are used to exhibit mutex mechanism. You should not say that to select one, because radio buttons, if they are not defined on same thread, they can be used to select multiple also. Currently it is working to select multiple also. So you should not say that radio buttons are used to select one. You should say that radio buttons are used to exhibit mutex mechanism. How to exhibit mutex? Mutex is nothing but if I define same name for both radios, that means this radio should have a name, gender, some name. The same name should be given for second radio also. So why you are giving same name for both radios? That means we are giving a same thread name for both radios, so that process will allow only one out of these two. That is the reason we have to give the same name. If you give a different name, then every radio button is independent. So if you give a common name, that means both are running on same thread. That thread name is gender. And out of that thread, process will allow only one. I already told you, if you don't give the same name, what will happen? If you don't give the same name, what will happen? If you don't give the same name, what will happen? So what will happen? User can select more than one also. Understood? Right. So if you have to make the user to select only one, then you have to exhibit mutex mechanism. So mutex can be defined by using this. Now see, I given the same name for both radios. And when I click male and when I click female, then the male will come out of the process. This is called mutual exclusion. Mutual exclusion. And I select male, so it will be checked. That is the point. So one will uncheck, another one will check. This is called mutual exclusion. So that is important. So at experience level, the best answer for radio button is to exhibit mutex mechanism. Radio buttons are used for exhibiting mutex mechanism, mutual exclusion. So when you need this, when you need radio buttons, generally when selection of any one option is mandatory. In selection of any one option is mandatory, and user can change the selection, and user can change the selection, then better to use radio. When selection is mandatory and user can change the selection, how you can make this mandatory? That means, suppose you see when I refresh, both are deselected. How you can make this gender mandatory? So we can make this gender mandatory simply by giving an option, an attribute for radio that is checked. Suppose for female, I given checked. Checked means by default it is selected. By default it is selected. Now even you refresh, so by default it is selected. You can change, but you cannot deselect it. You cannot deselect. Any one option can be selected. So deselection is not possible. Even you refresh, default one option will be selected. So that means when selection of one option is mandatory and user can change the selection, in this case, radio buttons are important. How you can make selection mandatory? By using checked. And remember, you cannot give checked for both of them. Even you give checked for both of them, which are having same name, it will apply only to the last one. It will apply only to the last one. So no use. So you have to give to only one. So if both are different names, then you can give both checked. But if both are having the same name, so that is one option must be checked. That is generally radios. Another important point is generally what a radio button will submit. What value a radio button will submit. Do you know what value radio button will submit? If anybody asked you a question like, what is the value that radio button submits? Any answer? Do you know what value radio button submits? Radio button submits only one value, that is on, on. It will not submit anything else. You can see practically. It will submit on. So it will submit on if value is not defined. If any value is defined, it will submit that value. So for example, you see now, I am not giving any value for radio buttons. Then I selected, so female or male, and click on submit. When I click on submit, you can see that it submits gender is on, on. In the URL, you can see that. So radio buttons by default submit on, not Boolean, not true or false. Huh? So they will by default submit on. You can see that clearly. They are submitting on. You can see in the URL clearly, right? Even I select male or female, so it shows on only. So I don't want that. I want to submit my own value. Then better, for both of them it is on only. Then better put a value. For first radio button, value is male. For second radio button, value is female. So then it can submit that value. Now you can see, I click selected female and submit. It submits gender equal to female. I selected male and submit, and it says gender is equal to male. It is going to submit that value. So that's submit. So generally it is used for this mechanism. So later in JavaScript, you will learn how to dynamically control them. But initially, these are the basic properties you need to understand. So for radio buttons, so the important is a common name. Even if you don't give a common name, doesn't matter. But if you don't give common name, every radio button will be independent. User can select more than one option. So if anyone asks like, can I select multiple options using radio buttons? Can I select multiple options with radio buttons? What do you say? Can I select multiple options with radio buttons? Yes. Yes. So then how to make radio buttons to choose only one option? Then how to make the radio buttons to choose only one option? By giving common name. Technically, you can say by giving common name, and technically you can say that by exhibiting, giving a common name is a mechanism of, what is the mechanism? Good. Giving a common name is mutex. Mutex is mutual exclusion, right? Mutual exclusion. So two answers will be there. A general answer and an experienced answer. Because what kind of answer because if you say selects one option, that is also correct point, but not technically great. That is the reason we need to have a technical answer. So that is, we need to understand why we call it as mutex. This is radio button. That is the reason you might have observed that, suppose in many websites, they will give an option, terms of service. That means they will give their license terms and conditions. And below that, they will give an option called, so I accept. So I accept. And for that, user have to select. They will give a checkbox. They will give a checkbox. Am I right? Have you seen this? Right. Now the point is, here how many options I have to select? Here how many options I have to select? Only one option I have to select. Yes. If one option I have to select, why not radio button? Why they haven't given radio button? Because you said that radio button is used to select one option. Then why not radio button is given here? Why checkbox? Understood the problem? Understood the problem? Because why radio button is not given? Because radio button once checked cannot be unchecked. Am I right? Radio button once checked cannot be unchecked. That is important. Yes. So that is the reason there they have given checkbox. So radio button, because many people have a wrong point of understanding. Many people think that radio button is used to select one option. Checkbox is used to select multiple options. That is wrong. Checkbox is used for one option also. Radio button is used for multiple also. Only the point is, according to the situation, we decide how to use it. So why checkbox? What is the point about checkbox? So checkbox, all same like radio button only, but checkbox allows to check and uncheck. Understood? Radio button allows to check, but it will not allow to uncheck. Checkbox allows to check and uncheck. You can check and uncheck the option. So how we can do that? Generally, for that, suppose here I am defining another option. So in the legend, I defined, so select course, something. And here we have input type is equal to checkbox. And this is like some Java. Roughly in the next line, we can put an ordered list. I am using like input type is equal to another checkbox, like .NET. So like this. So we are just defining. So input type is equal to checkbox and some PHP like this. And you see by default, these are the checkboxes. And checkboxes I select and I can deselect. You don't need any mutex mechanism. You don't need any mutex mechanism. You can directly check and uncheck the options. Check and uncheck the options. Now we have the checkbox to check and we have uncheck. You can select multiple options. You can choose multiple options. For checkboxes, you have to just define input type is equal to check. Now, same, everything works in a same way. Everything works in a same way. What is the point here? Is the name for checkbox. I can give the name for checkbox. Even you give the name same. So course. So this is also having the name course. Even you give the same name. So user can select only one. One or multiple. You can select one or multiple. It's not like only one. This is only for radios. If for radios same name is given, it will exhibit mutex. But checkbox will not exhibit mutex. So you can see here. So I selected .NET, PHP, Java, and submit. It can submit all the details. You see, all are on. So same like radio button, if you don't define a value, by default, checkboxes also will submit on only. Suppose if I don't select any one radio checkbox, I selected Java and PHP, .NET I haven't selected, only two values will be submitted. Only two will be submitted and both values will be on only. Don't think that, so if selected on, if not selected off, it's not like that. It will submit only on. It will not submit anything else. So if value is not defined. So if you want to submit the value, every checkbox must have a value. So value is equal to, we have to define the value what you want to submit. Similarly, value is equal to what value you want to submit. So value indicates what the value you want to submit. And you can see now, so when I select this Java, .NET, PHP, those values are submitted. Course is Java, course is .NET, course is PHP. It is submitting all of them. Individually, separate names we can give. But it is always good to have a same name because with that same name reference, you can access all the values that you will do later in JavaScript. So checkboxes and radio buttons, difference is this. Radio buttons, once checked, cannot be unchecked. They need mutex mechanism. Checkboxes can be checked and unchecked. You can, if you want any option selected, you can give that checked directly. Suppose by default, first two options are checked. You can see every time those two are selected. You want, you can uncheck the options. So, but by default, they are checked. So that is radios and checkboxes. Now, these days, very recently, the checkboxes are used in a switch form, but you cannot use them now. Checkboxes are used with a switch form. To use that switch form, you need to learn Bootstrap. In the latest generation of websites, you will not see traditional checkboxes. You will see checkboxes in a switch form. But for that, you need Bootstrap. That we are going to learn after CSS, how to make this more better. Because with HTML, you can do only this. With HTML, you can do only this. But with Bootstrap and CSS, you can do more. You can give more effects. And you can achieve like what you are looking in several websites. For example, I will show you. But don't take it seriously, just observe. Later, you will learn it because we haven't learned any Bootstrap, but you can try this, observe carefully. We will visit the website of Bootstrap, getbootstrap.com. This is the official website of Bootstrap. Just observe, later you will detailedly learn. In this, we can go to download. In the download, you can see that they give a CDN. What is CDN? And I will tell you in CSS beginning, we will discuss them. Here, there is a CDN for CSS. This is a CDN for CSS. Bootstrap have a CSS file. This is bootstrap min.css. You have to copy that file. So you have to copy that Bootstrap CDN file. This link you have to copy. I will copy that link. And come to your page. In the head section, paste that link. So you paste that copied link in your head section. Okay. Now that is Bootstrap. And you can see that your page looks little different. Alignments and all, they will change. Later you will learn Bootstrap. Suppose I am writing body class container. Don't worry. So observe, just point. You will learn later. So you see, it looks like this. Now see what I am doing here. So here in this area, this is input. All this input. So we kept in a div. And for this div, we apply a class called form switch. And for these checkboxes, we are giving a class called form check and form switch. These are the classes we apply. When we apply these classes to this, then you can see that. So the appearance little different comes here. So the appearance will come little bit. Now we can achieve a appearance of switch-like appearance. For that, we need to add some more points. Remember, this is not available in old version also. This is in the new version of Bootstrap, they have introduced that. So how to use it? I will show you. So for that, we need to use the form switches. So form switch. So technically, these are all checkboxes actually. And for the checkboxes, what we do is we have to write as form check like input. That is the option we need to define, right? So in forms directly, it is not available. That means in HTML directly, it is not available. Okay. So we have to achieve that by using Bootstrap. By using Bootstrap, we have to achieve that functionality. And that is only not old version of Bootstrap also. So very latest version of Bootstrap, they have given that. So in the latest version of Bootstrap, we call as the Bootstrap 5, which I will teach you in our class. So they have introduced this option. So what you have to do is, you have to apply two classes for that. This is form check input. So these are called form check inputs. And this is called form switch. And you can see they look like this. These are also checkboxes only, but their appearance can be changed like this. Now what user can do? User can turn on and turn off. That means checked and unchecked. Recently, these type of switches you can see regularly in websites. That is checkbox only. But directly in HTML, you cannot do that. So later in Bootstrap, you will learn how to do it. In the Bootstrap latest versions, they have introduced several new concepts. In Aldi version also, we don't have. That means people who already know Bootstrap, they don't know this. who already know Bootstrap also, they don't know this because this is very latestly added. So now when we start learning CSS and Bootstrap in the next session onwards, we will discuss all these things. So no need to try this, just observe that. That means because many people have a doubt, sir, in a website I have seen like this. You can achieve all that. But for that, you need good knowledge of CSS and Bootstrap. Only HTML cannot do that. So with CSS Bootstrap, we can achieve such type of functionality. Okay. So this is the new concept actually. So you don't need to try this. Just I have given a small example. You don't need to try this. Okay. So later you will learn in Java, in Bootstrap CSS, we are going to discuss about that. No worry about it. Okay. So this is the difference between radio button and checkbox. I hope everyone is clear with this. Understood? Radio button and the checkboxes, how we can use radio button and checkbox, right? So if selection is mandatory and selection of any one option is mandatory and user can switch between the selection, better go with radio button. If selection is not mandatory, it is optional, then go with checkboxes. Not like user can select many, user can select one. That is a wrong concept to understand about them. Okay. This is radios and the checkboxes. Next important is drop down list and the list boxes. Drop down list and list boxes. To design drop down list. So we have select. Select is used to design a drop down. In select, you can have OPT group, option group, and you can have option. Select is designed with option and option groups. Let's see how to use them. So drop downs, to design drop down. So we are defining here, suppose a field set. And in that field set, we have a legend. And here I said select city. And here we are using a select. Select is used to design a drop down. Now you can see this is a drop down. And in the drop down, so we can define options. Directly we can define option like Delhi. I can design option like Mumbai. And I can design option like Hyderabad. I can design option like Chennai, like this. Now you can see all these are the options so that the user can select any one option from the list. So by default, actually, I can also give an option at the top and I can say that select your city. So you will not have any other alternative. You have to write like an option only. Now, when user is watching this, we can even group these options. What we can do is this Delhi, Mumbai, these two, we can put in an option group, OPT group. In an OPT group, Delhi and Mumbai. In another option group, in another OPT group, so Hyderabad and Chennai. For this option group, we can give a label. We can give a label as some north. And for this, we can give a label as south. And you can see that option group advantage is it allows you to categorize that list like this. So under north, these options are present. Under south, these options are present. You can design groups and you can configure the groups. Now temporarily, so remember, so you can put this option group. So user cannot select it. It is just a label. User can choose only these items in the group. So, but option group is important to categorize the items and display those items. That is generally done by using these option groups. So drop downs are designed with select, and options are kept in option groups if you want to separate them. If all are belonging to one, then just you can give one option group, or without option group also you can define. Another important point is for this select we are giving a name. Name is some city, because we already know without name its value cannot be submitted. And every option have three properties actually. Every option have three attributes. What are those? Every option can have a value. Every option can have enabled. Every option can have selected. So it will have text, but text is given outside. So it will have text, it is given outside. Value indicates what to submit. Generally what happens is, these names that you given for option, those are submitted. You can see I selected Delhi and I submit. It submits that Delhi. That means by default, the text is submitted. This text is submitted. Sometimes we don't want like that. Suppose when user selects this Delhi, I want to submit its PIN code number. Then we can give a value. Value can be its PIN code number. So when user selects here, so a value, so we can submit its PIN code number. We can submit that PIN code number. So if I don't give value by default, and sometimes value can be directly the name. It depends on your requirement. Sometimes what we do is we ask the user to select city, but in the background, we will not identify through city. We identify through their PIN code and others. If I directly ask them to enter PIN code and they don't know, that will become difficult for user. That's the reason we say that, okay, type your city, select your city. We will take the city related PIN codes in the background for you. So that is how value can be different. So you see now. So for example, you can see here. So when I'm selecting a city like Mumbai and I click on submit, it submits its PIN code. That means what you see is text. What you submit is value. Understood? What you see is text. And what you see is that. And remember, name is given for only select, not for options. That means control is only one. Control is only one. The control contains several options. And as you already learned in HTML, a form cannot submit the value. For example, any form element cannot submit its value if there is no name. If I don't define a name for any control and it is in a form, if I don't define any name, let's refresh. I selected Delhi or Hyderabad or something and click on submit. It's not submitting any value in the URL. So form cannot submit the value of any control if there is no value. It's mandatory that it must have a value. So it must have a name, right? It should have a name. So the name, we have to define the name, some name, and that name will be used. So under this name, this can be submitted. Suppose whenever the page loads, I want Hyderabad city to selected, then we can use that option as selected. It makes by default that Hyderabad selected. By default, it makes that Hyderabad selected, and it is going to do that, right? So already, I hope you might have learned, if you learned already forms. So form cannot submit the value of any element if it is not having a name. Understood, everyone? So form cannot submit the value of any element if it is not having a name. So it's mandatory that every element must have a name. Understood? If every element must have a name. Just now I showed you that. Just now I showed you that difference. If there is no name, it is unable to submit. If there is a name, it is able to submit. So that is basically how you have to deal with this. So drop down have another option. Suppose temporarily I don't want this. See, I said selected, and see when I refresh, by default Hyderabad is selected. You can change the selection, but whenever page refresh, by default Hyderabad will be selected. So you can make any city disabled for some time. Temporarily you can disable. You can say disabled. That means now user cannot select that Mumbai. It's not selectable now. It is there in the list, but not selectable. Generally, why we need that? Sometimes, suppose you are browsing a shopping site. So a product is available in some cities, but in some cities that product is not available. Then they cannot remove that city, because for other products that city is there, but only for this product that city will not work. In that case, we will not delete that. We will just disable it and enable it. So to disabling, enabling, we will not do in the code like this here every time. We write a logic for that. In JavaScript, we will learn how to enable, disable dynamically according to the situation. But you should know how to disable it. For that, there is an attribute called disable, which is used for disabling. So this is a drop down. This is a drop down. So through the drop down, you can define. But here you can select only one option. You can select only one option. If you want user to select more than one option, then what you can do is, suppose see now, I am just giving here. So select courses, something. And here I am writing a simple select. In that we have an option. So here also you can give option groups and all, same. Suppose I said Java, I said here option some like .NET, like. So we have like option like full stack like this. So we have option like PHP like this. Now, when I save this, you can see it is a drop down and allows to select only one. Then I can change it to a list box. To convert this drop down into a list box, you have to use size. If I give size is equal to 2, then automatically 2 or 3 according to your contents. You can give large also. You can see that it changes into a list box now. So user can scroll and select. You can adjust the width and height by using CSS also. Initially, this is a list box. If size is not given, then it will be transformed into drop down. If size is given, it will be size 3 I am giving. Then you will get a list box. List box depends on how much size you are giving. Suppose I given size as 5, but we have only 4. Then scroll bar will not come. Scroll bar will come only when there are more items. So depending on the size and the number of items. But what is advantage of this is, so you can allow to select more than one. You can just add an attribute called multiple. Multiple allows you to select more than one. That means when I choose here, so select. Now I can select this one. How to select another? You can simply drag, it will select. Or you can select first one, use control key and click on last, it's selected. You can randomly select with control key. Or you can select with shift key also. First one selected, shift key, last one selected. Or you can drag. So you can select more than one. And you can see when I submit, it's not submitted because in order to submit, this should have a name. Name I given as courses. then you can see when user selects this .NET and full stack and submit, those details are submitted same like checkboxes. So user can choose more than one option. A drop-down can be converted into a list box. And to convert drop-down into list box, so we need these options, right? So we need to handle these options. So what are the options? So we need to just give the property size. And to select multiple, you have to give the option as multiple. That is how to manage the select. So drop downs and list boxes, both are designed with the same select. For a list box extra, you have to give size, and to select multiple, you have to define multiple. If I don't give multiple, then list box will be allowing to select only one. So if you want multiple, then you have to choose multiple. All other options are same. How you give an option, how you disable, enable, selected, all are same. Just the appearance will be changing for that. That is a drop down and a list box. Next, important in the form control. So we have a radio button, we have a checkbox, we have drop downs, so we have list box. And in the latest versions, so we have a meter control. So meter control is used to display the grade meters actually. This is new in HTML5. In HTML5, we have a meter control. So we have a meter, we have a progress. So what is the purpose of this meter control is you can see here, suppose I'm defining. So here I'm configuring some meter control. So generally it is used for defining like this. Suppose I am writing as ratings. I'm writing like ratings. So we have a meter control newly. Meter is a new control. So this meter control, so I defined as here, I'll say as good. Okay. And in the next line, I have another meter as some average. And in the next line, we have a meter as poor, something like this. Now this meter control actually looks like this. So that is the meter. So this is meter, looks like a bar, right? That is a meter control. Now meter have properties like minimum. Minimum is equal to 1. So maximum is equal to 10. Your wish, you can give 10 or 100. You can start with 1,000, 10,000, anything you can give. Even you can start with a fraction, 0.525. So 1 to 5, your wish, you can give anything. So minimum is 1, maximum is 10, and value also 10. So then you can see, so if value is equal to maximum, then it looks like filled. Green filled will come. It will look like filled. The green filled option will come. Filled will come. So this is basically how you can configure that, the meter, right? That is minimum, maximum, and value. Suppose I given like this, min is equal to 1 and max equal to 10, and value is equal to some 7. Then you can see it will show 7 points filled like this. So if I given, so like min is equal to 1, so max is equal to 10, and value is equal to some 2. So that means it will show like this, poor. So how many users, right? Yeah, you can say ratings, or you can say your mobile battery charging, how much % completed or remaining, anything. You can show anything in this way. We can add some colors also. For that, with CSS we can add. Without CSS also, it defines colors. For example, suppose what you can do is, suppose I given all 10, means all are green, all 10 value. That means all are green and full. But what you can do is here, so we have min, max and this. Suppose when you are giving value, so here 2 more options will be there. Like low is equal to 0 and high is equal to 0. Already you know that there is no order for attributes. You can write any attribute anywhere. There is no order. Already you might have learned this. Right. Now the point is here. If low and high are 0, then it is normal green color only. But see here, I am giving low is more than minimum. More than minimum is, suppose I given as some 4 or say 6. And high I given as 8. That means you can see that very less gap between low. Yeah, suppose I given 4, 8. That means low and high difference is 4. Remember, when you give low and high values, make sure that low value is above the minimum you mentioned and high value is less than the maximum you mentioned. Okay. So maximum is 10. Make sure that it is within that range. If it is 4 and 8, then you can see its color changes. It gets a different color. That means you have 4 gap. Suppose I am giving low is equal to 6 and high is equal to 8. That means only 2 gap, less gap between low and high. If there is less gap between low and high, then it will show red color like this. You can change the colors. You can even change the colors by using CSS also. So later in Bootstrap and CSS, you will learn that. You can put your own effects and colors and you can modify them. You can modify. That is generally the point here. So technically, when you are dealing with this, so we can configure these options. You cannot use any color names. The colors of these depends on low, high values. Understood? You cannot use any color names or anything. Which color? So to display, these 3 colors only will display. And these 3 colors depends on this low and high value. If you are not writing low and high value, it will be green only. You have to use the low and high value, then only it will be displayed in this way. Okay. So this is a new meter control. The meter control, so with minimum, maximum, high and low values. You cannot submit these values. These values are used to show the status. For showing the status, we use that. There is another one. So instead of meter, you can use progress. For example, we have downloading. So we can use progress. By using the progress, I already told you now. I hope you are not concentrating. What is the condition for low and high? What is the condition for low and high values? You haven't concentrated on that. I told you the condition for low and high value. What is the condition of low and high value? Low must be above minimum. Understood? Low must be above minimum. And below high, actually below high. High must be below max and above minimum. Understood? These are the conditions we have to define. So that means when you give the low value, so the low value must be above the minimum and below the high. That means because if high value is, suppose high value is 8, you cannot give low value as 9. I hope you understood that basic thing. You cannot give. So low and high values cannot be anything, whatever you want. They must be within the specific range. Okay, right. And progress, by default, you can see the progress. Progress is going to display like this. This is progress. This is progress. Mostly we use this in JavaScript, jQuery, Ajax to show the status of the tasks like downloading, installing, all such things. For this progress also, we can define, for progress also we can define min is equal to 1 and max is equal to 100 and value is equal to some 20. So then we can write here like 20% completed, and it will display that like this. This can keep on changing with our JavaScript. Later with the JavaScript, we can keep on changing. We can put animations and effects for this progress also with Bootstrap. Currently in HTML, we can't do anything other than this. We can simply put the progress in this way, We don't have any attributes for that. So we cannot use any animations and all. Animations, anything not there. So minimum, maximum value, that's it. So we define, suppose it is 80, that means 80% downloaded here. Suppose I said 100, value 100, then it will get 100. You have to change that. So progress, if you don't give the min and max and value, by default progress will be animated in this way. We can dynamically control it later with this. So that is generally how we can use the progress, how we can configure and use the progress. So in the form elements, the progress is another element used for showing the status. We will use them and we will configure more effectively in Bootstrap. Okay, right. Next one more is text area. We have another text area. Text area is used for multi-line text box. That means suppose I'm saying your comments. Now here user have to enter the comments. So user have to enter the comments. Then if I give input type is equal to text. So this will allow to enter only one line text. You cannot enter more than one line. Even if I hit enter, it's submitted. It's not coming to next line. Then instead of text box, then we can use a text area. We can use text area. Text area allows to type. So multi-line text, it allows to type multi-line text. You can type multi-line text here and automatically scroll bar will come. You can adjust the width and height of this, or you can put certain rows also. You can simply put text area rows is equal to how many? So some 4 calls is equal to some 40. And you can see it will display the width and height in this way. So you can add the content here. Automatically it will allow to display multi-line. You can also put by default some text inside it. Suppose you can write here. So your text here, something like this. So we can display that. So it is going to display it. By default, you can add some text. But important, this text area is so depending here, I hope this is not the new concept. Do you know how many characters are allowed in a URL? You have URL, na? In URL, how many characters are allowed? Do you know? I think you started HTML means by this time you should have a clarity on that. How many characters are allowed? If you don't know, you haven't learned them. At least now you know, so that you will not ask that question again. So maximum number of characters allowed 2048. Understood? And anywhere the string length can be up to 2048 characters. Okay, na? Right. So because some people may not have learned this in the beginning, because when you started learning about forms, we already discussed this concept, maximum limit. Form have 2 methods. One is get method and post method. 2 methods are there. get and post method. So when form is submitted on get request, there is a limit we call as query string. You know query string? Query string means in the URL question mark, some values will be there. The maximum limit will be 2048 characters. Understood? Right. So it should not be a question from a person who already learned HTML forms. Okay. Right. So this is just sample text. You can replace this text. You can write your own text. So we are saying that we can put some text. If you don't want this text to be modified, you know already learned in HTML. So you can put read only so that it is not modified. You cannot enter anything. You can just watch it. If you don't want to submit, then you can make it as disabled. You might have learned all this, right? Yeah. So that is disabled. Yeah. Generally, text areas, when you are defining text area placeholder, suppose your text like this, you are defining. That means if there is no value here, text area will not have any placeholders. Placeholder is not for text area. This is only for text box. Okay. Placeholder is not for text areas. Text area also will not, text area is an RC data element. You remembered we learned HTML elements are 5 types. It is an RC data element. What is RC data element means? What is RC data? HTML elements are classified into 5 types. What are those? We have normal elements. We have void elements. Yeah, we have RC data elements. We have raw text elements, and we have foreign elements. Right? These are the categories of elements. RC data element is rich context, yes. And these elements will not allow any another element inside them. Understood? These are for only plain text. That means if I say bold hello, it will not allow this bold inside it. It will not allow bold inside it. It will just display as plain text only. You cannot apply any format. That's what generally we call as RC data elements. Okay. So that is raw text. So rich content, actually, rich context. So it will not allow any another content inside it, any another element inside it. So, and if you are allowing to enter multiple lines, then you always have to use this text area. Okay, that is for text area. So these are all the important form elements. Now in the form elements, one more important is buttons. Actually, buttons in early version of HTML, we have 2 types of buttons categorized. We have generic buttons and non-generic buttons. Generally, buttons are used to confirm the user actions. User actions can be confirmed by using buttons. We have 2 types of buttons, generic and non-generic. Generic buttons. So we have to understand the generic buttons, that they have a functionality by default. Like we have input type is equal to, so submit, that is a generic button. And input type is equal to reset. This is also generic button. These 2 are used to submit the form and reset the form. By default, they have a functionality. Now in the latest version, we design button type is equal to submit. And we design button type is equal to reset. What is advantage of the latest version buttons is, so we have a button tag. So what is advantage here is, in this button tag, we can have an image, you can have a symbol, so and you can have a text, anything. But these old version HTML buttons, they can have only text. They cannot have anything else. But here you can put an image or a symbol or text, anything you keep inside these buttons. So the new HTML buttons are designed in this way. If you don't define type, by default button is submit. Suppose these have default functionality. For example, suppose we are giving name. So, and we are adding a text box. Input type is equal to text. And here we have a button. I am giving just submit. I haven't mentioned any type, but by default that have the ability. So this text box should have a name as username. Okay. And when I enter anything into it and click on submit, by default it can submit. Without writing any functionality, by default it have a functionality. So such buttons are called as generic buttons. They have by default functionality. You can design that like this also. Input type is equal to submit, but this is old. Because now in the new version, here we can put images. I can put an image source is equal to whatever images we have, some assets, some image. So like some shoe.jpg. So suppose width is some 100. So height is equal to some height is equal to some 30, like this we define. And we can have an image inside it button. You can put icons, you can put symbols, you can do so much in these buttons. But this cannot happen. So this cannot have anything other than value is text. Suppose we say register, only some text we can keep. But this is also submit button. It have the ability to submit the data. What is advantage of the new version buttons is you can add some images, you can add some symbols inside it. You can define according to your requirement. So you can configure it according to your requirement. So that is generally, so the buttons in the latest version. These are generic buttons. Reset button have reset ability. That means if I give here button and the type is equal to reset, then the name I will give as reset. You see that I typed something and clicked on reset button. It will reset the form to the normal. Whatever normal state is there, it will set to the normal. It will reset the values to the normal state. So why they are called generic buttons? Because they have by default functionality. You can design input type reset or you can design button. These days we use these buttons only. These are old. No longer we don't use these old type of buttons. And non-generic button, you can write input type is equal to button or you can use latest version button type is equal to button. Non-generic button means they don't have any functionality. We have to write the functionality manually. That means if I say button and the type is equal to button, and here we say as print, and you click on this print button, nothing will happen. By default, it doesn't have any ability, not submitting the form also. So we have to write the functionality according to our requirement using our scripting knowledge, JavaScript and all these, we need to do that. So these are all the basic options you need to understand and you need to know with the buttons, how you can configure and deal. So two types of buttons are there. This is old HTML buttons and these are the new HTML buttons. And two categories, generic and non-generic. Generic by default have a functionality. Non-generic, you have to manually define the functionality according to the requirements. These are all the basic options used for handling the input, how we can manage the input in the forms and work with the input. So this is all about working with the forms and dealing with the forms. In HTML, so you have some more options to understand actually, like how to control multimedia, and how do we control the options like, so canvas, so and how we can control SVG, like MathML, some advanced options are there, but SVG, canvas, MathML, and multimedia like things. So we have to control them with the combination of JavaScript. So we are not going to discuss now these options. The best way of learning them is with the JavaScript, because once you know JavaScript, then we can understand and work with these options more perfectly. That's the reason we will learn them when we are dealing with JavaScript. What is Canvas, what is SVG, how to design them, how to work, because they need some programming. Without programming, up to a certain extent only we can use them. With programming, we can better. So we will learn and use them with programming only, how to deal with them and work with them. Now, after understanding all this, now we need to go start working with CSS now. So we are going to start understanding and learning with CSS, styles and CSS. So that we will see from the next session onwards, right? Tomorrow, we will start understanding and learning with CSS and HTML, okay? How the combination works. What is CSS, how it works. All these points we are going to learn from tomorrow, okay? Right, tomorrow we'll meet.